So, although people in suicidal crises often perceive themselves to be socially isolated, we often find that they're still embedded in social networks. However, they typically don't feel comfortable sharing their suicidal thoughts and behaviors with others. So, like people with other stigmatized statuses, the decision to disclose can be very difficult and very stressful for people. And that's really where my research steps in. I'm focused on trying to understand disclosure practices as well as the factors that influence disclosure and the impact on disclosure in terms of recovery from suicidal crises and suicide prevention. So when people ask why study suicide, I typically refer to what I like to call the three Ps. First, suicide is pervasive. So in this country alone, as upwards of 40,000 people die by suicide annually. And this is not to even mention the countless more individuals who are thinking about and attempting suicide. If we take into account that every person who dies by suicide leaves behind at least six loved ones, we can start to really appreciate the far-reaching consequences for individuals, families, and communities. Second, suicide is persistent. So despite the fact that we've seen increases in advocacy and funding over the years, we haven't seen any appreciable difference in terms of suicide rates. In fact, we're starting to see concerning upward trend in rates. And lastly, suicide is painful. So if every individual who is experiencing a suicidal crisis is in unbearable pain. And having worked with many of them, I felt as though I needed to dedicate my life to trying to relieve it. My work on disclosure rests on a very simple premise, but something that we sort of intuitively know. Namely, the fact that when we disclose something, we're disclosing it to an individual and within a given relationship. So my work really tries to move beyond what traditional research has done, and that is, it tries to move beyond focusing only on the individual and the characteristic of an individual that does the disclosing. So my work really tries to focus on learning more about the prospective confidants in disclosure and looking at the social spaces in which disclosure takes place. So in a recent study, I worked with a group of suicide attempt survivors using a specific type of interviewing known as social network methodology, which really allows us to capture in-depth information about individual social relationships. And what we found was that two key things were important for disclosure, or there were two key things or characteristics that influenced their disclosure. First, it was looking at the relationship-specific long-term consequences of the disclosure, and second, it was how effective people felt that they could communicate their suicide-related experiences within a given relationship. So right now, we're working with our community partners to really look at real-world applications of these findings. So what can you expect as a graduate student from working with me? You can expect structure. So I believe that when leaving this program, you should graduate with a core set of research skills that will help you to be successful in your career. You can expect collaboration. And what I mean by that is that we will have to work together to think about the best ways that we can do the most collective good and make the most collective impact. You can expect hands-on learning. And by that I mean that we will develop ways for you to have hands-on and applied experience in doing research rather than just thinking or reading about it. So lastly, you can expect support. And what I mean by that is that you can expect me to spend time with you, listen to you, and do my best to help you accomplish your goals.